Hi everyone, welcome. This is Saurabh. Welcome to 50pedia. In this series of having conversations with some of the industry leaders, business leaders, and people uh, who are doing things differently in the space of digital transformation. Today I have another guest, Chandra, with us. Chandra is our partner. He's the founder and CEO of a security services, security product company, Seceon. Welcome, Chandra.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Saurabh. Great to be part of your discussion.
Thank you so much. Likewise. Chandra, if you can take 30 seconds, do an introduction about what your background is, what you've been doing, and a little bit about Seceon, just to set the stage.
Yeah, thanks, Saurabh. My name is Chandra Pandey. I have been in the high-tech industry for more than 25 years, and the last 20 plus years deeply into the cybersecurity. Before that, it was networking side. And definitely, we started Seceon almost 7+ years back. And when we started it, we had already seen what is being seen today. At that time, some of the glimpse has come through with some of the major breaches which has occurred, and those companies had a lot of tools and resources, and still they did not detect those on the timely matters. They heard it about those from the outside, and that thing has become very common today. If you look into ransomware attack or intellectual property thefts and all that, they are all related with what was already, we had a preview of that more than 7-8 years back. Now it has kind of become a forefront and everyday occurrence.
And again, I think that's where Seceon and Locus, there is a lot of mind share there, because working with customers on cybersecurity, we continue to see those patterns, continue to work on putting solutions together. And again, you also said something where I want to really pick your brain in today's session, ransomware. So yeah, let's dive deep into it. You want to talk about 30 seconds on the Seceon product itself? What are you guys building? What are you guys doing with customers before I jump into some more questions?
Yeah, thanks, Saurabh. So as far as the Seceon has developed a platform which we call it like OTM, Open Threat Management Platform. There are two variations of it. It's like AI SIM and AI XDR. But the platform itself was from the get-go developed to deliver comprehensive cybersecurity for digital era. When we say that, we mean that there are, in the cybersecurity, you have two major domains. It's the hygiene, and then the second domain is that's where you have to monitor everything, detect the threats, and stop it before it's too late. And so far, we have a lot of success in the market. We have more than 5,000 customers around the globe. And we do work with the partners. We are a partner only kind of go-to-market strategy we have. We don't sell anything directly to the end customers. And our goal is always kind of like have a disruptive innovations which keeps your cybersecurity detections in a proactive manner instead of being a reactive, and then you kind of find out it's too late, and it's pretty stressful for everybody involved into that process. So that's where we are coming from.
When I started thinking of sitting down with you, one of the things we've been seeing, and I've written about it, Locus has been writing about it, is a lot of action which is happening on ransomware in the market, right? Like you said, maybe 7-8 years back there was less chat about it, but now it's in the mainstream. Everybody's talking about it. There is no CIO CISO event where there is no chat. There is chat about ransomware, right? Everybody is talking about it. Recently, even White House came out and said, not just federal organizations, but private companies also must take action, protect themselves, right? There is legislation coming. There's so much happening. So I wanted to really double down on the topic of ransomware and pick on your experiences.
As you pointed out, ransomware is a common occurrence. Every day there are probably more than 10,000 cases of ransomwares are happening each and every day. And some we hear about a lot, we don't hear about it as well, because people just go pay and go move on their life. And they get also ransomware again and again, because now even one other interesting thing I would like to share, that somebody will ransomware and then they have access to your organization. They sell that access to the another party to go and ransom you again with the another set of the ransomware. So those things are also happening as well. Very much we see in the market as well. And one of the things we were talking about is ransomware is something people should be preparing that, hey, that attack can happen, but if I am able to stop it into early steps and stages, I does not have to worry about it. So compromising a credential, getting through your firewall gateways, those things you should assume that you want to have those hygiene better, but things are going to happen. Your credential can be compromised from social media and all that in there. So you have to assume that. And somebody just coming to you and saying, hey, I'll give you multi-factor and that is going to solve like a silver bullet. That's not the case as well. So you have to imagine that it's getting you better and better, making it harder. You are not an easy target anymore, but still you have to be prepared with having that continuous real-time monitoring and then detecting the threats before it's too late and stopping it. So that is something you have to be prepared. And that's where what we have seen is, as I mentioned, we have around 6,000 deployment, and we have seen that ransomware people have tried it out into multiple hundreds of them. But if those detections happen when somebody is compromising somebody's credential or after credentials, they are trying to do certain things where doing the privilege escalation, creating a new set of credential, doing some lateral movement, your horizontal and vertical, like scanning, asset discovery, going to some command and control center. If you pull this whole story together, all of these things have to happen before somebody can have a successful ransomware attack on you. And if you are able to detect those, pull those together and detect those before it got to the point where data is exfiltrated, you are in a good shape. And you have closed the door. The key point is not only detecting, but also is stopping it and making your hygiene better and better, knowing what are your weakest links are, so you are able to improve them and make it better for the future. So that way it's not easier for even to get into your organizations as well. So those things are pretty critical. And one of the other things we were talking earlier, that the ransomware is just something where it's not that you get ransomware once you pay and you are off to it, because that is also getting exploited again and again. And sometimes the exploit of one attack, successful attack, is multiple fold, because one thing is just giving you key to decrypt your stuff in there. Another thing is also they have already stolen the data. Data is kept somewhere. So now they start leaking it and now you have to pay for that. So you have to always keep in mind, if you can have a prevention, it's a better that don't get into the point where you have been ransomware. Make sure that you have a solution which detects in early step and stops it. That is much more cost effective, a lot of peace of mind than just paying the ransomware. But because ransomware payment is only probably 15% of the total cost, your operation going down, and then you have to recover for it, all the incident response and investigation, all the regulatory filing, that is much more damaging. And the brand damage is also another significant cost, which you cannot put the money to it easily for that. So something just have to be kept in mind.
Absolutely, and very well said. I think I've even written about it, that the costs of breach can be extremely high, right? the trust is eroded with the customers. You have to redo your entire security and IT posture, right? There is so much of cost, and plus just paying ransomware doesn't guarantee anything. There were, I think, few incidents recently where the company paid the ransom and then they also discovered that data was still being sold on the dark web, right? And you cannot really do much about it after a certain point in time. Great. One thing you mentioned about detection and continuous monitoring. So Chandra, most of the customers we talk to, work with, everybody you go and you would see that they have too many tools. They have tools for protection, for monitoring. There are too many tools in the enterprise, right? So I don't think the problem has been lacking of tools. What is the gaps you see, right? One of the classic examples, we go into a customer environment, they have like 40 plus tools, right? And they're still left out open. I have a view on it, but I want to pick your brain on this. What do you see is the crucial gap CIOs and CISOs are missing out on, or what are the things they can do even when they have too many tools and they still have some gaps?
Yeah, that's a great question. So see, the way the industry have been kind of developed, that there is a problem, people will just jump in, say, oh, I have this huge case, that huge case and all that. And all of a sudden they lose the view of the bigger kind of like overall picture. They just go into the small problems and, hey, this is what I want to solve. And then when you solve that problem, what you are doing is you are not looking into the overall kind of like impact of just solving that problem, that, hey, how much is the noise I'm going to add? How much resources I will need to run it effectively? And can I make it work effectively? So what end up happening is, now, as you mentioned, that there are most of the organization with the enterprises, they have like almost 20 to 40 tools. There are some are exception which have 200 plus tools out there. And effectively, to first of all, to make a decision, anything coming out of those and having that decision being actionable, that what you are going to do about it. So many people have to kind of go through it and make a decision to take actions on it. It becomes pretty much unactionable. That, it's like you have you might have one set of the tool, like let's say you have a network detection is telling one thing, now it has to be correlated into the other tool. It has to be correlated into your log side. You might have to look into your behavior side, and you might have to look into your email systems and identity management system. And all of a sudden you figure it out that, it's like that job has become extremely difficult. And then if you have to add the context that I saw something today, because the biggest thing is if you don't have a context, when I'm seeing something today, in this context something has been seen in the past. Whether the past is not your 1 day, 2 day, 1 month, it can be sometimes multiple months in there. That's right. If you don't have that visibility to put into the context and situational awareness, you are now going to be dealing with these thousands and thousands of alerts coming out of these your 20 or 40 different tools with their own experts looking into it. First of all, it's very hard to get those experts, find those experts in the industry in there. And every tool has its own context. So even though you have an army of the people, security experts and all that, nobody can be experts on everything. But even if you are lucky to get it, now to put the context and situational awareness using the human over the millions and sometimes billions of the events, it becomes extremely challenging. So what end up happening in the real life, you get these events, people will start saying this is not relevant, not relevant, not relevant. In the beginning, they may spend a lot of time to look at it, but then after a few days or weeks or month, they have been overwhelmed and they say, this doesn't matter because it has happened a month back and nothing came out of it, so I think it's okay. All of a sudden that mentality starts settling in there. And now you have these tools, they have become nothing but it's like a collection tool, then taking actionable intelligence out of them and doing something about it. So then you have the breach happen in there. And if the breach happens or you got ransomware, now people go in and just like look into these tools to see if I have some evidence to see what has happened and all that in there. And that is not what you want to have, because you can have these tools if you are not able to effectively run and get the value out of it and make them work together. It's extremely hard to kind of like have actionable intelligence to take actions on those alerts. So it's always kind of like a biggest problem, like big organizations, on one side you feel that, I'm secure because I have a lot of tools out there, I have a big security team. But at the same time, those organizations are also where the information get lost. Nobody is able to look into the overall picture together and add a context to it and take actionable kind of like decisions on those data sets. And that is a big problem for the bigger enterprise. And smaller enterprises, they don't have those many tools, but still they got like maybe 5-10 tools, and they run into the similar issues out there because they don't have a staff to even look into each one of those tools. They might have 2-3 staff looking into across the different products, and which they cannot be expert at it. And then you go into the SME and SMBs, they don't have resources to afford those tools, and then forget about even running those effectively as well. So now they have another spectrum where they are kind of fell behind, and they don't have enough of resources to address their cybersecurity issues out there. And that's where we have done something, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit about it, that what your team and our team has been kind of talking about and what we have done together.
So on the same point, I want you to talk about where do you see the balance? So you talked about 3 different spectrums. There are large companies, a lot of resources, but large teams, a lot of investments already made, but integration gaps between these tools and either too much of noise or too much of missing out on opportunities, right? Then there are really small companies who don't have the maturity and who may be the most vulnerable. And then the medium or the SMB sector who are aware of these gaps, but may not have enough resources or may have their own, practical challenges. Where is the balance, Chandra? What if you could take or talk about a few examples? Have you seen any balance case scenarios? Any classic approaches which companies have taken to really come out of those difficult business challenges?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and see, that is the challenge we cite, and that's why we created the Seceon ourselves. Because when we started, we had seen it like Target, Home Depot, JP Morgan, Sony, they were breached, and it's like not that they didn't have the intention to protect themselves. Those companies had pretty good investment into the cybersecurity, but still they learned about the breaches from outside. They didn't detect it themselves. And when the investigation happened, they can find the evidence were there. That's right. So it was not because of the they didn't have the data, but they had too much data. If you have too much data, too much noise, what you do about it? You don't kind of make it actionable. And if it is not actionable, you can't do anything about it. So what we did is we created a platform from the get-go that, look, in organization, you have to look into everything into the single context, whether it is a network, that what the things are happening into your application level, services level, host level, their interaction, whether it's the internal interaction, external interactions, at kind of like within the organizations or outside, or even people coming from remote workforce or even cloud. All of these things, because clouds and everything is now combined together, your on-prem cloud, remote access, mobile access, all of those things have to be looked into the single context, and everything have to be looked together. You cannot have like multiple sides. Once you look together and create a platform which is able to monitor everything and understand the context and understand the application services, what is being monitored, what makes sense, what does not make sense, what I'm seeing right now in this context and situation, what I have seen in the past in this organization, and what is happening around the globe. Once you put all these things together, now you are not coming up with a huge amount of noise. You will see there are certain things going bad in there. And then those things you highlight, that I see that here data collections are happening, exfiltrations are happening in there, or somebody is trying to get into the door, whether they are trying to get into the door through your gateways, or they're trying to get into the door compromising a credential using the keylogger or sending a malware or some of those things in there. And one thing is also, you have to kind of admit that some of those things you may miss. So it's not you may always see it. So you have to also be ready that, hey, I can miss one thing, but there are many other things are going to be followed up in there. So just like one side, somebody was telling me one time that, Chandra, as a security kind of a defender side, we have to be right all the time. And I said that, look, that is not always true, because even a attacker, when they are coming in, they have to do multiple things to be successful in the attack. So if they have to get through the door, they have to make a kind of like home in your organization. They have to communicate and get the next set of the kind of like the activity, what need to be done. They have to discover your asset and kind of start collecting the asset, find out where are those gates are open to collect the data, which data can be collected. So there is a lot of things they have to be successful to kind of like be a successful attack out there too. So if you had a solution, you are just like, a lot of time, if you look into recently in the industry breaches, people just talk about that credential got breach, and then they were able to collect 37 gigabyte of source code and exfiltrate it, or they took multiple terabyte of like design file and they exfiltrated. Those things, not an engineer goes out and kind of takes multiple terabyte of like design files, or not a particular engineer takes 37 gigabytes of like source code like every day. So those activities should be very easy to detect, and when they are acting, how they are acting in conjunction to their peer and all that, you should be able to monitor. So the thing is, like, key point is that real-time monitoring with the context and situation awareness is very important. If you don't have it, then I just get like, let's say I got Saurabh credential. With the Saurabh credential, if I go in and I'm able to take all of your company's crown jewel assets in there, which you have the access to, which is basically is like my company monitoring system detection has failed, because Saurabh does not go every day collecting those data and looking into all those files and all that in there. This is something exception is happening. You should know about it and say, okay, this doesn't make sense. If I'm coming at the time which Saurabh never wakes up, or coming from a machine where Saurabh never comes from, or coming from so there is like so many features you have where Saurabh can be tied to those features, and there are deviations happening, and those are like going far. You want to take actions on those. So that is something really critical that you have to realize. So when we develop our platform, we say that, hey, this is not something we are developing just for the big organization who can afford like those $500,000 or $1 million kind of like tools and operation together. But even for the small company, if I make a platform which is multi-tier, multi-tenancy, you can take that same solution and you can give it to the people who have like 100 people organization. If you look into their neural network and all that, or their machine learning environment will be much more smaller than somebody who have 500,000 nodes in there. That's right. So, and you can make it cost effective for both of them, so they can afford to have that solution. And that's what we have done. And I'll give a credit to your team, because your team have a lot of talented people. They question us that, hey, we have some organization, younger organization, which are getting born in the cloud itself. What we can do for them in the cloud, and how we kind of like bring all the telemetry together and be on the proactive side. And we showed them the solution. We work with them, and kind of like we are still kind of doing some innovation with your team, which we will be even discussing next week, that, hey, these are some of the other things we want to add on to the solution. So thanks to your team, they are pretty innovative team you have as well. And we really appreciate their kind of insight and the feedback, what need to be done to address those customers who are getting born in the cloud itself.
Awesome. Chandra, thanks for some of those wonderful points. And I was nodding my head because you're going right into my head of where I was starting to think that, role-based access is something which we are all wanting to go away from, right? And then you gave some really specific examples that made complete sense. The biggest word which was rhyming there for me and echoing for me was context, right? And it falls right in the middle of zero trust framework, what we are seeing develop, right? Have you seen some solid implementations of zero trust? Obviously, it's early days. It's at a framework. Not a lot of products are there which are zero trust compliant fully. So there's a lot of work happening in the industry on this particular space. But obviously, there are very solid set of best practices which are already out there, right? Some companies are working on it. Some are much farther ahead. Have you seen any good examples of zero trust implementations? What you see in people, CIOs and CISOs bake into their environments and really start to see benefits, where they are able to track your context and get to what you were just talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So you see, that's a great question, and we started talking like from the day one. It's like we have a paper written down in 2016 that 0 day zero trust. Mm-hmm. So we wrote it down. So one of the things is like for us, the monitoring side of like in the organization, 0 day zero trust is pretty important in there, that because without that, detection becomes very challenging there. Now on the hygiene side, the challenge have been always on the hygiene side. There are certain things you want to kind of monitor and verify. So it was never a zero trust. It was like, okay, monitor, verify, then let it kind of go through and all that in there. Now, what happens is 0 day zero trust is just something which is not that easy on the gateways to implement it all over the place, because there are certain things not everyone is very knowledgeable where they can say, okay, this is good for me, this is not good and not good and all that in there. And then if you leave that decision to be made by a automated engines all the time, and that engine makes a wrong decision, stops something in there, now people will start complaining about productivity and all that in there. Because see, one thing on the gateway side is a lot different than when you are doing the monitoring, and then with the context and situation, you are letting kind of decision being made or decision being defined. That's right. And those decisions are not happening on the kind of like, you don't have to look into the billions of event decisions every day in there. So it will take some time. So the point I was kind of going to make it, 0 day zero trust is here to stay. It is going to stay in there. certain things will get baked in, and you have to assume that, hey, these are like right thing to let it go. There are certain things which will be always where you have to have some intelligence being fed in, like on the real time basis, to make sure those decisions are being taken in the real time, close to real time. That's what it is in there. And that will kind of like make the life much more simpler going forward in there. Otherwise, what will happen is still you will be tied up to the rules, signatures, and policies. And those are defined up front. If something is defined up front, and if you have to take it as it is, then there is no zero trust, because you have already trusted certain thing in there. And that's what the people take advantage of. Today, you kind of like come in and say, okay, hey, these set of like my rules, signatures, and policies are, somebody will kind of like now find a way to bypass those ones in there. You have a certain set of identity, they will act as that identity and get through it in there, and then you have trusted it. But by the monitoring, we are able to say that, hey, this is not you, what you said. But when you have to do on the protection side coming in, you have to have like a way to present yourself, and that presentation need to be challenged and say, yeah, this is what it is. And people have to kind of go through a little bit more than what they have been doing previously to accept that zero trust kind of like environment in there, And sometimes it becomes like that, okay, how willing people are to accept that extra steps in the beginning, a little bit pain, but that pain kind of have a lot of kind of a gain in the later part of it when it comes down to the cybersecurity hygiene and cybersecurity for the environment and the organization point of view. Saurabh.
Awesome. Chandra, so final question. So we talked about zero trust, we talked about tools rationalization, we talked about integration among the various tools, right? Threat intelligence, AI, ML, we talked about multiple things like that, right? My final question to you is around, more of a role play question, and you being an advisor, if I am a CIO or a CISO who's very serious about making investments, obviously value-driven investments, which are directly impacting and reducing risk for my organization, what are those 5 or 5 to 10 or however number you want to pick advices you would give? What are those 5 to 10 things I should do or plan for next 3 to 6 months type of time frame, so that the investments are really worth reducing the risk? What is your actionable advice for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is my thought. I'm pretty sure different people have a different thought in there. But for any organization, for the CIO or CISO, their decision should be that, okay, I want to have hygiene, which is a good hygiene in there. That's right. Because if you have a bad hygiene, that's kind of like best thing first you can do is start with the hygiene. You don't have to have a perfect hygiene, but you have to have a hygiene. So basically what does it mean is your gateways, whether it's your firewall, identity, or your AV, if you have it in there, proxy and all that, they have to be in place and they have to be functional and have been updated or getting updated. So they have updated with their new set of with the new set of the software releases and all that. Then the next thing, which is pretty important for any organization, a CISO or CIO should look and say that, okay, what are all the set of the asset application services I have in my organization? And that can be human, it can be any of the devices, any applications I have, and who is using that, how they are getting used and all that. Because if I don't have that, a way of looking into all of my assets and their interactions and how they are being used and all that in there. So you got to have a solution where you are able to visualize everything. You have to have a complete visibility when they are being used, who's using it, how much is being used and all that in there. That is really critical. Then also one of the other thing is like, okay, I have those things in there, or they are kind of like in a good shape. You can never be perfect into somebody will say, oh, I have this vulnerability. That vulnerability is as good as it is. Even if you're trying to be the best, it is as good as you have kind of like found out or have been already disclosed. There is many things which you don't know about it and can be exploited as well. That's right. So that's something you want to kind of like, so you know your assets. And now you have to have a capability to monitor each of those things in the real time. And then same time, now you want to have a solution which is able to proactively detect misuse of any one of those kind of like, whether it's identity or the applications or services or anything horizontally happening in your environment. You are able to put it all together and detect something unusual or something bad happening in there. And then once you detect something, you got to have a solution to go and address those. And those addressing means like whether I have to address it inside my environment or I have to address it my gateways or identity. That should not be like like days operation. That should be something, if I see a critical issues in there, I should have a control over it to go and address it within kind of real time, if not real time in few minutes. It should not go beyond hours that, hey, it's like in hours I'm waiting for the things to happen and all that in there. That's right. And those decisions can be only happening into the short period of time once you have a confidence and have a complete visibility of your environment and knowing what are the impact of which of the services, applications, processes, my critical assets are. Otherwise, you will be afraid of taking a decisions. And that's where basically people have these breaches happen and they are kind of like left speechless or left kind of dumbfounded that, hey, this thing happened. And we were not able to do something about it because we knew something bad was going on, but they cannot see exactly what it was, So those are the things is like, so my point of view is like hygiene. Then you have to have a kind of real-time monitoring, know all of things in your environment. With the detections, detect the things in the context and situations, knowing your environment very well with the comprehensive visibility. And then with that confidence, you are able to take actions on the timely basis. If you are not able to do that, then no matter how much you spend, whatever you do in there, if you are not able to come with the actionable intelligence and take the actions, then still you are too far behind in your maturity cycle. And that's something is like you have to address. Yeah, that's
all right. Wonderful, Chandra. Thank you so much. This was a great response, great answer. And again, thanks for sharing your ideas, your thoughts on some of these questions. Great conversation. Thank you. And I hope people listening can take away some of those actionable ideas and thoughts from this session. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Saurabh. Thank you for giving me opportunity to answer some of your very thoughtful questions, which are pretty hard for anybody in the industry right now, Thank you so much.